A big man known as Beef Stew is certainly going to fit in Memphis. That is for sure. But just how well our good buddy Damichael Cole, co-host of Locked On Grizzlies, back with us on this episode to talk about Beef Stew to those who have already known Mr. Isaiah Stewart. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts for this edition of the show, Joe Mullinax, and it is always a good day when I say one of your hosts because that means the dynamic duo rides once more. Damichael Cole, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, is here with us. And thank goodness that Damichael is still working because the doggiest of dog days of the NBA offseason don't stop greats like Damichael Cole from putting out content. We're going to talk about a couple of his pieces today, looking at this Grizzlies roster, both in the front court and at the point guard position. And then we will wrap up today's program looking at futures that we haven't talked about in a while. And I think the Memphis Grizzlies may be getting a little bit more love than perhaps I originally expected from a team that, Bleacher Report and folks like that are saying should be one of the worst in the NBA. So we got a lot to get to on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, and I will bring in the incomparable Damichael Cole, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. Very good to be back with you, partner. And thank goodness, again, somebody's working, right? Somebody's out here writing stuff about the Memphis Grizzlies franchise because we are in the doggiest of dog days. If you missed the Monday episode, it was an episode that occurred in terms of, the ongoing angst that some fans feel about the change at the point guard position. And we'll talk more about who is currently on the roster later on in the show. But you have something that is very satisfying for the soul. A guy by the name of Beef Stew, Mr. Isaiah Stewart, one of the newest members of the Memphis Grizzlies going into this season. You took the time over the Commercial Appeal, Damichael, to talk to those that know Beef Stew best, that have covered him so far in his career. And it sounds like people are pretty excited that Beef Stew is now a member of the Memphis Grizzlies. They see it as a good fit, it seems.
Yeah, definitely see it as a good fit. And, I talked to a few reporters and some other people as well. The reporters were quoted in the story, but just talking to people just to get an idea of, Isaiah Stewart, what is he going to bring to Memphis? How is he in that locker room in Detroit? How was he through that transition, right? Remember, that was the Detroit team that lost, 28 games in a row, had a 17-win season, then had a 14-win season. And, it was a struggle fest, for a few years there. And he went through that, and then as they turned into a playoff team, as they turned into the number one seed, he was a pivotal piece through that entire stretch. So, again, talked to a couple reporters. Omari Sankofa was one of them. He actually covered the Grizzlies, a few seasons ago.
Oh, you don't have to tell me. Yeah. Omari Sankofa and we go back. I love me some Omari. Shout out to Omari.
Shout out to Omari, man. And so I think he was really a good person to talk to as someone who was here, at the beginning of Ja's tenure in Memphis, but also as a guy who specifically – is from the Detroit area, covered Isaiah Stewart in pretty much his entire career there. And so he has experience covering Memphis as well as being from the Detroit area and covering the Detroit Pistons. And he said, I think Memphians are going to love him. He said, outside of Detroit, I think Memphis is one of the cities that will embrace him for everything that he is, especially for a city that likes wrestling. He's just the perfect wrestling heel type guy. I knew that you would like that quote, Joe. That's just who he is. The first time he gets mixed up with somebody, I know FedEx Forum is going to go crazy. So that's what Omari said. And again, in the story, we focused on different layers, and we'll get to that probably throughout this segment. But the first thing that I wanted to touch on was the idea of him being that enforcer, right? That guy who can be that guy that can say, hey, look, don't mess with my guys. And that is sometimes a thankless role, in the NBA, right? You have guys who feel that role on certain teams. You have teams that don't have that role filled, and probably no one thinks about who cares as long as you're winning, right? But a lot of people do. I'm one of those people who do. I don't know how everybody else feels about an enforcer or whatever. Like, it's not to be dirty or anything, but it's to protect your guys, and especially on a team like this one. Like, I talked about it on the show, but there were multiple times last season, when we saw Grizzlies guys, take get fouled a little bit harder, as teams would play a little bit chippier because they weren't afraid that the Grizzlies responded or anything like that. Like, I don't know why this is the first thing that always comes to my mind, but I believe it was Santi that got fouled hard and got up and said something to Draymond Green, and I believe Jaren Jackson Jr. walked in Draymond Green's direction, and Draymond told him to shut up. Told him to shut up, Joe, and Jaren walked off. And I just was like, man, that wasn't Steven Adams. That wasn't Dylan Brooks. That wasn't Tony Allen. That wasn't Zach Randolph. It just wasn't, a good example of what I feel like the Grizzlies culture has been, from that toughness standpoint over the years. And they had a lot of moments. I mean, that's just one of the most notable because it was Draymond. But they had several moments like that last season. And with a team that's young, right? Cam Boozer coming into the league. We just heard Jalen Wells on the show the other day. Jalen Wells said he's strong. So what do you think teams are going to want to do to a strong rookie? They're going to be a little physical with him. They're going to have to, or they're going to get moved out of the way. So teams are going to, they're going to move Cam Boozer around and whatnot, and it's going to take that teammate. And Zach Edey is that type of guy as well, but it's going to take those type of teammates. Say, hey, look, you ain't about to pick on my young guys, Jalen Wells, Cedric Coward, and all those dudes. And one of those things that Amari touched on, the enforcer stuff isn't just, him trying to wrestle guys and fight guys and things like that. Guys know what happens when you go to the rim against Isaiah Stewart. Not that he's trying to clothesline guys or anything, but he's one of the better rim protectors in the league. The numbers verify that. His block percentage over the last 2 years would have been the highest on the Grizzlies in each season. So he protects the rim at a high level. You look at him at 6'8", it's more than that. He has a 7'4" wingspan. Then in addition to that, if he doesn't get the block, he's not giving you free layups. And again, that's just something, it's a culture change that's needed. But that's part of it. I mean, there's so many layers to cover that I tried to get to in that story.
It's an excellent story. Highly recommend the folks check it out if they have not already done so at the Commercial Appeal. I'm with you on the need for an enforcer. I was raised by my father and my grandfather in basketball as it being a contact sport. Okay, football is a collision sport. Football is a small car accident almost every play. Basketball is a contact sport. I don't like the basketball where there are whistles for barely any contact. I love when basketball games are physical. That might be why grit and grind is my basketball spirit animal. Like the 82 to 73s, I'm cool with that. I like it when it's in the mud because it shows me that level of intensity and physicality that I value in sports. All right. I think that Isaiah Stewart brings that to the Memphis Grizzlies. Not necessarily in terms of being dirty, like you alluded to, but I think he brings that mentality. And as you start a rebuild, right, it has to happen organically. You have to let the players find themselves amongst one another as you establish what it means to be a Memphis Grizzlies in this new era, or a member of the Memphis Grizzlies in this new era. But to your point, Grizz Next Gen was, hey, look, we're cool and young and energetic. And it was, I'm going to use a word I probably shouldn't use. It was very superficial. It was very surface deep to me. I don't know how much depth there was beyond, hey, look at us dancing and having fun and being in these end of game scrums, on TV, a bunch of one-liners and catchphrases. When the going got tough, what happened? Right? Like you alluded to with Draymond Green. When you get punched in the mouth, that's a famous Mike Tyson quote, right? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. What's the plan after that? And I'm thinking that Isaiah Stewart's going to help this Grizzlies organization develop what their plan is more so. And again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm slighting the previous group because they had the success they had in a different way. Yeah, but I do think Isaiah Stewart brings a type of energy in that is going to resonate more with the greater Memphis area and fan base than the way things were done before.
Yeah, and if you just lay it out, from a big picture standpoint, that's the direction that the Grizzlies are going in. They are emphasizing toughness, physicality, those type of things. In that last era that were just the Grizz Next Gen area, you had some of that, but they were also emphasizing, trying to add kind of some finesse type things to the roster. For example, when you had a guy like Kyle Anderson on the roster and had the chance possibly to retain him, You chose to opt for Santi Aldama, more of a finesse player because of the ability to shoot the three-point shot and things like that. So the Grizzlies, the roster dynamic, the roster building was just a little bit different because you wanted to kind of surround those guys like Ja, Dez, and Jaren with those type of players. But you got a Cam Boozer who's super strong. Jalen Wells is 6'7". You got Cedric Coward with a 7-foot wingspan. Zach Eady's 7'3", 7'4", 7'4" wingspan, and Isaiah Stewart. Like, they are remodeling this roster to be kind of some big bad bullies, type of guys. And again, sometimes you have to, look what's happening around the league and how teams are winning. And you look at all these teams that are winning championships as of late. It's a lot of versatile defenses, and I think that's part of why the Grizzlies are going in this direction. And Isaiah Stewart certainly fits that mold.
The bullies of Beale Street. I like that energy. And again, I'm not advocating for actual bullying. We're playing a sport here, folks. Let us know on X, at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. How are you feeling about Isaiah Stewart's arrival? Do you think he's going to have the impact that Damichael and I clearly think he will? And again, shout out to Damichael for the great piece. Make sure you're checking it out over at the Commercial Appeal. We're going to talk about another Damichael Cole piece coming up. I promise we'll leave the previous episode's point guard conversation alone. We're going to focus on the guys on the roster. How is this point guard battle going to potentially shape out ahead of training camp? Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and locations. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute that I have been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. A great addition can have a ripple effect on everybody around them. The Grizzlies are hoping that with Isaiah Stewart. When you find somebody who brings the right skills, the right attitude, the right experience, makes the entire group better. Finding a qualified candidate matters so much, and tools like Indeed Sponsored Jobs help make that process easier. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. And listeners to this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Grizzlies. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Damichael Cole, you have another piece over at the Commercial Appeal talking about the point guard battle. Again, I talked about why some folks are still very much obsessed with Ja Morant on Monday's edition of the podcast. Ja, of course, now for the Portland Trailblazers, he is in their conversations. For the Grizzlies, we've talked about the realities of Ty Jerome, Scottie Pippen Jr., Cam Spencer. You wrote about it. How do you see this point guard battle playing out, at least in the here and now, with a month or so to go until training camp?
Well, the first thing I'll say is sometimes you just got to look at, what's in front of you and how things are being presented, right? We saw the NBA draft. The Grizzlies didn't take a point guard and had opportunities, to take some guys, and they chose not to. Free agency came and went. Grizzlies didn't take a point guard. They didn't trade for one. Technically, you can say they traded for D'Angelo Russell. He's not going to be here much longer. So with all that being said, they didn't address the point guard position in the offseason. I asked Zach Kleiman after the NBA draft why they didn't draft in the first round, at least, when they had the 2 first-round picks, why they didn't draft the point guard at the time. And he essentially said that the team pretty much they were excited about getting a chance to look at the other guys that they have on the roster a little bit more. But specifically in this story, I focused on kind of the starting point guard battle, right? We know that this roster is kind of littered with a bunch of different options at point guard. But when you talk about the starting point guard, I think we can all, well, most of us, it's personal preference maybe to some, but
most of us, that's an important point to make.
Yeah, there we go. I don't want to talk in absolutes here. For the most part, I believe Ty Jerome's going to be the guy, right? But there are cases where you could say, hey, look, if you want a guy like Scottie Pippen Jr., if you put Scottie Pippen Jr., Cedric Coward, and Jalen Wells as your perimeter core around Cam Boozer and Zach Edey. You're going to get a well-rounded defensive group that's going to be somewhere in the upper half of the league defensively. And with Ty Jerome, of course, there's some things that Scottie Pippen Jr. Doesn't give you. Both of them can score the basketball in different ways. They, shot the basketball well in their Grizzlies career. Ty Jerome shot the basketball well probably his whole life. Scottie Pippen Jr. is more scorer than shooter. Defensively, Scottie Pippen Jr. is the guy who has the advantage, but the playmaker. The assist numbers were higher for Ty Jerome. He took care of the basketball better. I know that's one of the concerns for those who've had concerns about Scottie Pippen Jr. and just how successful he can be with the Grizzlies. Turnovers. Taking care of the basketball is something that is a problem for him at times. And then you talk about complimenting the guys around you, right? And this is probably the biggest advantage to me when I talk about Ty Jerome probably having the advantage in the starting point guard battle. It's not the scoring, because Scottie Pippen Jr. can score. It's not even the shooting. Scottie Pippen Jr. can shoot, and he's a really good defender. I mean, him, Jalen Wells, and Cedric Howard being out there to defend every game and having Zach Edey behind them, it would be fun to watch defensively. But, again, Cedric Howard and Jalen Wells are not there as playmakers yet. Like, yeah, there's a reason. Jalen Wells will tell you. He said it when he was on the show the other day. That is something that he's really working on in his game. He said he sucked at pick and roll reads, things like that. Cedric Howard is working on becoming better as a playmaker. Yes, Scottie Pippen Jr. is a point guard. He can make those plays, but Ty Jerome is much more adept at doing so. So the fact that you're going to need a point guard who's probably going to have a heavy usage and making things happen for a teammate, and you're going to have the Cam Boozer effect. Like, I hadn't mentioned that, but you're going to have that. But from the point guard standpoint right now, I think Ty Jerome is probably the inside track for a lot of those things that he brings. But, we got to mention Cam Spencer as well. He's probably not going to start over these guys. But when you look at the numbers on Cam Spencer, and we saw it last season, a guy averaged over 5.5 assists per game. When you look at the assist percentages of the returning players, he's third. It's those top two guys. It's Pippen and Jerome. And then it's Cam Spencer above the Javon Smalls, Jermaine Shacks, Walter Clayton Jr., who we saw Walter Clayton Jr. had a couple really good, assist game in his short tenure in Memphis. So I think even beyond the whole Ty Jerome, Scottie Pippen Jr. conversation, Cam Spencer, based on the numbers, probably has a little room between the other guys.
I've talked about Jeremy Grant as training wheels for the offense when they get into the mud, when they can't find their shooting stroke. Cam Boozer, Zach Edey, Cedric Howard. I think Ty Jerome is the exact same thing, right? But he is a perimeter-based player in terms of that guard that can have the ball in his hands. I'm all for leaning into building this roster around Cam Boozer. I think that that's 100% what the team should do moving forward. But having Ty Jerome out there as a secondary facilitator of offense, if not the primary one, allows for Boozer to grow into that role. We're talking about the guy that's going to be the youngest player in the NBA this coming season. Do I expect him to be in the Rookie of the Year conversation? Yes. Do I expect him to have bad nights? Yes. It is unrealistic to think he's going to come in guns a-blazing being the very best player that he can be. He has some room for growth in his own game. I love Ty Jerome as that training wheel concept, especially from a playmaker viewpoint. I like Scottie Pippen Jr. because you made a very important distinction there a moment ago, partner. He's not necessarily a shooter as much as he is a scorer, right? Scottie Pippen Jr. can score the ball. To me, those types of players are most valuable in reserve roles. When you need a bucket from a guy, an energy microwave, I think might be the archetype or the icon you can get in 2K. You want somebody that can be that type of scorer. Obviously, Jerome can do that, but the playmaking gap is big for me. I think you could say Scottie Pippen Jr., hey, we need you for 3 to 5 minutes to give these guys a blow. Go get some buckets. Go play passing lanes. Create chaos. Scottie Pippen Jr. can be that guy for you, I think, as of this moment. There's no development necessary there, and he serves that purpose best in a reserve role, at least to me.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. And just to add a layer onto that, I think another part of the dynamic with those two players, Pippen and Jerome, is just kind of the complementary style that they can present. Both guys can play on the ball. Both guys can play off the ball. So you can actually play them together a lot. But correct. I believe Cam Spencer is going to get some minutes. And you can answer this question if you want. I think I know the answer. Would you rather see Cam Spencer on the floor with Scottie Pippen Jr. or Ty Jerome for extended periods? I'm going to say Scottie Pippen Jr. just because of the extra defensive element. Like, yes, Ty Jerome and Cam Spencer offensively are going to light it up, but you got to go back on the other end too. And to have, a Scottie Pippen Jr. who can guard, we've clearly seen they put him on Kevin Durant at times. So they feel like he can guard, up a couple positions and things like that. That can kind of balance out, the lineups when you go to your reserves and you have to turn to, the whether it's Jeremy Grant, Gigi Jackson, whoever Jalen Wells, or whatever the case may be. I believe Cam Spencer is going to factor into there. And the minutes, I think the way that should be distributed is he should be with another guard that's a high-level defender, and Scottie Pippen Jr. fits the bill.
Scottie Pippen Jr. most certainly does. Let Damichael Cole and I on X, at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax, know what you are thinking. Let us know in the comments. We're on the same page here. Ty Jerome should be the starter. Scottie Pippen Jr. certainly should be in the rotation. And I'm with you on Cam Spencer. If they're going to continue with this hockey change kind of style of rotations and 11 or 12 guys are going to play, Cam Spencer will most certainly be in that mix, and I think he deserves to be. And I do think he would be a better fit next to Scottie Pippen Jr. So we're on the same page. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this edition of the show, checking back in with NBA futures. The Memphis Grizzlies, their number has increased. Are we surprised by that? Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts, joined by the incomparable Damichael Cole, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. He is cranking out content. Make sure you're checking out the pieces on Isaiah Stewart and the point guard battle over at the Commercial Appeal. Also, make sure you're with him on our Friday edition of the show. Damichael will be flying solo, taking you into the weekend. He'll talk about that here in a bit. But we're going to close out this edition of the show, partner, talking about NBA futures. The last time I checked this, Damichael, I'm fairly confident. I remember us talking about it. The Grizzlies were posted at around 26, 27 wins. And I think that number has been steamed a little bit, to use some terminology from the gamblers. Not that I am one, of course. I talk about FanDuel. I certainly don't use FanDuel. I don't have a problem. Anyway, 29.5 is the number now, over and under 29.5 wins for the Memphis Grizzlies. So FanDuel is basically asking at this stage, Damichael, are the Memphis Grizzlies a 30-win basketball team? That is an improvement from, are they a 26 or 27-win basketball team? I certainly think they are a 30-win basketball team. I think they're in the conversation for that 10th and final play-in, postseason, whatever you want to call it, spot. Not saying they're going to get it, but I think they're in the conversation. They're around 9 or 10. And if you're in that conversation, you're probably winning at least, 35 games, around there. So I think Memphis is an over 29.5 win team as they are currently constructed, assuming health. What say you, Damichael Cole? Do you agree with maybe sportsbooks warming up to the Memphis Grizzlies at least a little bit? Not necessarily saying they're a playoff team, but saying they are better than we initially thought.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because I can already tell you, based on the way that this roster is constructed, what we're going to be talking about in 3 months when it comes to this Grizzlies team in terms of the big picture results aspect. We're going to be talking about finishing games. Because if you look at the roster right now, they have a bunch of what I call impact players. And we've talked about this. When Ty Jerome stepped on the floor last season, we saw a team that looked way better. When Zach Edey stepped on the floor for those 10-11 games, we saw a team that looked way better. When Scottie Pippen Jr. stepped on the floor, we saw a team that looked better. Remember when Cedric Howard was coming off the bench early in the season? Then they put him in the, then he would come in the game and be like, man, he clearly should be starting. They're way better when he's on the floor, and the net rating numbers and all of that verified that. So when you factor in and you combine that, the team was way better with Ty Jerome. The team was way better with Cedric Howard. The team was way better with Zach Edey. Guess what? Cam Boozer, go look at the numbers at Duke. When he was on the floor, on a team that was way better, and he projects to be that type of player. So you have a bunch of guys who just have winning modes to them, but they're young. Young teams struggle to close games, and the Grizzlies still, they don't have that guy 10 seconds on the shot clock, at least right now. Yes, Boozer could become that, and he probably will, but right now, 5 seconds on the shot clock, game on the line, you're either putting the ball in the hands of a rookie or you're putting the ball in the hands of probably Ty Jerome. And there are going to be some questions there because other teams are going to be putting the ball in the hands of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, Luka Doncic, and there's levels. So I think the thing about where that number is right now is if you look at the roster and you look at it the way that I just described it, you have a bunch of guys who make the team better. And in that case, if you just look at conventional wisdom, they should be a team that should achieve 30 wins. But there's going to be, I feel like, a bunch of games where you see 2 to 3 quarters. It's like, man, this team looks really good. And then when you get late in that fourth quarter, there's going to be some nights where, hey, look, they got Anthony Edwards. We don't. They got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We don't yet, right? They got, Luka. We don't got him yet. So I think that there are going to be those moments that when you look back on the end of the season, like, man, that the Grizzlies kind of battled some of those tough teams, right, in close games, and they'll probably lose some of them. But overall, I think that's right where they can be. I believe 30 wins, I would take it with this roster because I think you have the depth as well. I talk about it every year. For me, when you project win totals from the regular season standpoint, to me, that is a stat that you have to factor in the depth of the team. If this guy goes down, who's there? If that guy goes down, and the Grizzlies have positioned themselves to pretty much every position to at least have a stopgap option, right? Even down to Zach Edey goes down, the Grizzlies are going to struggle. But Isaiah Stewart, again, with his rim protection ability to knock down some shots, Quentin Post, rim protection ability to knock down some shots, like you can tread water in that stretch. If, again, Ty Jerome goes down as your starting point guard, Scottie Pippen Jr. steps in. Then you have Cam Spencer as a backup. Like you can survive, that type of stretch. Jeremy Grant, G.G. Jackson, Jalen Wells, Cedric Howard. That's 4 guys who some would say are starting caliber wings on this team for this team. So you have some versatility. Hey, this guy goes down, Jeremy Grant. He's a little bit older. Maybe he misses a couple games. Okay, that means more minutes for G.G. Jackson. Olivier Maxson Prosper can get in there from time to time. So they have the depth to combat an injury or two here. Whereas in the past, it was like, oh, if Ja goes down, that's all you wrote. So I think when you factor in the depth right now, and all those guys are trending upwards in terms of their recovery and whatnot. So you factor in the depth and the availability standpoint, I think, and the impact. I think betting the over on that total puts you in a good spot.
I would agree. Let us know on X at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. How are you feeling about the over? Damichael and I would take the over on 29.5 wins. That's the current number over at FanDuel. I think that the depth is a major component there. And I also think we can talk more about this on a future show, partner. You're right that they don't have that guy in Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic. I think not that you can recreate a superstar because that's not possible, but the aggregate there, right? One of those guys, Ty Jerome, Jeremy Grant, they've taken those shots before. One of those guys is probably going to get open, depending on what type of scheme you're running, what type of matchups there are on the perimeter. I think there's opportunity to scheme things up a little bit. And if we believe in Tuomas Isolo as much as apparently Zach Kleiman does, then maybe that should be a point of emphasis going into this season. Thanks for being with us on this edition of the show. Damichael Cole, I am very grateful to be here with you. Unfortunately, I will not be with you on Friday. You'll be flying solo. What do you think you'll be talking to the good people about on Friday?
Yeah, look, it's slow news time around here, but again, there are some things that are gradually developing. So, look, I'm really not all the way sure as of this moment, but hold your horses because, again, we're checking in, we're doing all that good stuff, and there's some moving pieces, and some news things that could be happening with the Grizzlies soon. So maybe we get one of those things to follow through, but if not, there's a lot of ways to kind of break down this roster and kind of where it is and have a couple other stories coming out as well.
Make sure you're hanging out with Damichael Cole on Friday. Make sure you're with us each and every time that an episode drops as the offseason mercifully comes to an end here in the next few weeks and preseason basketball. It'll be training camp here before you know it, partner, heading into that part of the year. Thank you so much for being with us on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. We will be sending you soon to the first ever 24/7 YouTube channel on the NBA. We'll also on audio be sending you to Locked On NBA for your second listen. At least that's hopefully where you'll be heading off to. I do want to end this episode giving a shout out to one of the greatest Tennesseans that has ever lived, Dolly Parton, who of course passed away at the age of 80 on Tuesday. My favorite Dolly Parton story has a Memphis connection, so this is relevant to the Grizzlies.
Drop it on us, Joe. Drop it on us.
So obviously Dolly Parton is from Eastern Tennessee, right?
Right.
Memphis is in Western Tennessee. The year the 3-6 Mafia won their Oscar, guess who else was nominated for an Oscar for Best Song? Dolly Parton. And Dolly Parton lost to 3-6 Mafia, which is a fun sentence to say on any podcast, regardless of the content. 3-6 Mafia wins the Oscar, and that was great, right? Shout out to 3-6. Guess who writes a letter to 3-6 Mafia congratulating them on their Oscar win and saying, way to bring it home for Tennessee? Dolly Parton wrote that letter. So from all the amazing work, over 300+ million books being put in the hands of children, all the charitable donations, all the work that she did, and obviously her music and entertainment career, representing Tennessee well. Rest in peace, Dolly Parton. Thank you so much for everything you've done for Tennessee and for the United States and for the world. I think we lost one of those last figures, Damichael, that I don't think of a single person that hates Dolly Parton. One of those pretty significant folks in not just American history, but again, from the Smoky Mountains there's Dollywood in the eastern part of the state out in Pigeon Forge. Pretty significant loss for the state of Tennessee, Dolly Parton passing away.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember, just living in East Tennessee, for a while. And
that's right.
Yeah. And I mean, they love Dolly Parton out there. They loved her. And, I remember going to places like Gatlinburg, and you'll see like just pictures and everything, all these different things representing Dolly Parton everywhere. So definitely, someone who represented not just East Tennessee well, but as you said, Joe, the state of Tennessee. A legend for sure.
Rest in peace, Dolly Parton. We will always love you, safe to say. For Damichael Cole, I am Joe Mullinax. Thanks for being with us. We will catch you right back here on Friday. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing. Most importantly, make sure you're back next time. See you.